Our next panel for today is about gaming as a growth driver and how utilization of online gaming technology can go beyond the sector into various other spheres such as business and cryptocurrency. Let me quickly introduce the panelists for this session. Gaurav Gaggar, founder of Brain Dual Games Private Limited, Pankaj Karna, MD at Maple Capital Advisors, Rohith Bhat, CEO of 99 Games, and our panel moderator for this session, Prashanth Rao, partner at Deloitte. In the interest of maximizing the panel time, their detailed bios and LinkedIn profiles are mentioned in the chat box. So over to you, Prashant.
Thank you. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prashant, loud and clear.
Okay. Right. So I would like to do a quick welcome of the panelists here. I have here with me Rohith, Gaurav, and Pankaj. I would like to just have a quick round of introduction by each of the panelists, and then we'll move on to the topic. Off to you, Rohith.
Hi, this is Rohith here. I'm CEO and founder of 99 Games. We develop and publish games for the mobile platform, and our primary monetization area is building games for the global market, but we are looking at India with increasing interest and trying to build long-term gaming franchises for the Indian market.
Thank you. Pankaj, go next.
Hi, my name is Pankaj Karna. I lead Maple Capital based out of New Delhi. We've been focusing, we are boutique investment bank and accelerator. We have been focusing on a number of emerging sectors, gaming being one. In fact, a recent report, which I think my colleague will just share to all on the chat box, has been basically focused on the gaming space. We've been working very closely and personally evaluating many companies in the space and including working with a number of international majors. It's very interesting times and I look forward to the chat. Thanks.
Thank you. Gaurav?
Hi, this is Gaurav Gaggar. I'm the MD of Brain Dual Games. I'm a chartered accountant by profession and have been in gaming for about a decade. We co-founded Ada 52, which is the first, online poker company. And now we have interests in chess, we have interests in poker and quizzing. So we also have a law firm where we do a lot of work around gaming and have been leading that.
Thank you. So with that lovely introduction by all our panelists, let's just jump into the topic that we're going to discuss. So gaming as a growth driver is what we're going to discuss in the next hour about. So to start off and kick off this topic, what I do is lay the grounds on what is gaming all about in India. Are there real gamers? How many of them? What does the market look like for the next 5 minutes? So if you look into it, we have about 365 million gamers as we speak of now. There's an estimation of this going up to 500 plus million in the next 2 years. Also, the devices that these are played on, smartphone plays a very, very important key role in this. And we currently stand at about 500 million smartphones. And the estimates for this, again, stands at about 800 million in the next 2 years. So you can see that there's millions of growth, which is anticipated in the next 2 years in both these aspects. Another very important aspect that we look into when we talk about gaming, online gaming, is the internet connectivity. So we have about 680 odd million broadband users in India as we speak right now. It is growing at an exponential speed of about 35% in the last 3 years. So even if we expect the same growth in the next few years, if not for more, we have all the right ingredients set up for our next years to come. So looking at it, mobile games, how many mobile games are downloaded elsewhere in the world? How many are in India? So if you look into it, about monthly, there are downloads about 10.5 to 11 billion downloads in the last 6 to 7 months globally. So in India, in 2019, we witnessed about 19 billion downloads of apps. So that's the scale that we are talking about. Then when you look into it as a market size per se, overall India market size is just about to reach 1 billion kind of a thing, which has grown about 25% CAGR in the last 5 years, but it's expected to grow at a faster pace, 30 plus percentage in the next 5 years. So that's where we see things in the next few this thing. Now, a very important question which comes in is, how much does all of these gamers play games? So there's certain interesting statistics around here which says global average is about 7 hours per week is what gamers play in. And then Indian users also are on the same. Germany tops the chart with about 8 hours a week. I was quite surprised myself when I looked into it, because maybe then I cross over the bar than an average user, because I play more than 8 hours a week per se. As a stress buster, that's definitely helps me out per se. So that's the broad background into this. So now when we jump into it and talk about, in the previous panel, we heard people speaking about the types of games, whether it's real money gaming, esports, casual games, etc. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the business models among all of this are. We're going to talk about three major things. When you talk about gaming in India overall, there are three blocks that you can divide the discussion into, or four blocks maybe. The first block is real money gaming. We're going to talk a lot about that. That's where the money is. Second one is how India as a market can build games and supply to the world. That's the second part of it. Third one is building localized game for India and supplying it to the India market. That's the third. Fourth one, maybe gaming as a overall gamification, as we call it, for learning, for trainings, for attracting customers, etc. So those can be the broad four verticals. For the panel today, what we're going to do is talk about the first three aspects, because the fourth one is a topic by itself. It can go on for ever per se. There are about 400 plus gaming startups in India. So what is it that's attracting all of these investments and companies? Let's dive into it and have a few questions answered by our allied panelists here. Okay, so with this, if I go into it, the audience for these gaming companies are fast changing. If you look into it, if I take my own example, my 7-year-old son plays religiously a game a day, in the sense he has to play a car racing game, which is his favorite, and then his Plant versus Zombies. You can't take it away from him. You can take away anything else. Also, is my mother, who's about 65 years age. She has a game favorite of her own. So that means there is a wide array of these customers who are there. So why don't we ask Gaurav here to say what has changed in terms of this audience in the last 1 decade, and how are the companies catering to the needs of these audience? Gaurav, you're on mute. Shivangi, if you can help unmute Gaurav.
Or I'll do that right away. Yes.
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Yeah. So sorry, my question got lost over there in that process.
Sorry. Yeah. What I was saying is the gaming audience has changed drastically in the last 10 years. So how are companies catering to this vast shift in gaming audience? You have a wide variety. How are they catering to the needs, and who are your audience as you see as of now?
At the current moment, I think the audience is right from age 7 till 70, and like you rightly said, your mother would be playing, so would my mother. She would be playing something on card like solitaire or ludo or something like that. And the kids are playing. They're playing some racing games, or they'll be playing Roblox, or they'll be playing some poker games. So the audience has shifted from Netflix to this, and it's our belief that Netflix has only one way consumption. Or when you talk about gaming, there's a dopamine hit. So you're not only consuming, you're giving back. And that means the engagement factor is only going to increase and increase and increase. So if you look at it from the overall perspective and the ecosystem, gaming will be extremely engaging, and it's here to stay. And so there's an opportunity for all startups to come up with games, and they can choose their genre as to what is going to be attractive for them. And they should start focusing on that. Huge market right now.
Right. Thanks for that. So moving from that, gaming for being successful and place where it is right now and place where it has to go to, there are a bunch of aspects and there are ecosystem around it. Pankaj, can you throw some light around the overall gaming ecosystem and what are the various aspects which are required to make this industry a success?
Thanks, Prashanth. I think one of the most important aspects is really access, right? So, the whole inflection point in gaming has happened because of, smartphones. I mean, we have done gaming in our growing up years, but those were at best, offline games or would be online, well, electronic games like the Nintendo, kind of small consoles which used to come, and then it graduated into bigger consoles and all of that. But I think the coming of mobile penetration, smartphone penetration, I think number one criteria which is driving inflection is smartphone penetration. Second is obviously uh, what has happened. I think the Indian market has capitalized on low-hanging fruit, which is basically existing games which people are already playing offline have got converted into online games. So, you've got Teen Patti online, you've got, Tambola online, you've got Rummy online, uh, and, poker and others. So I think that's the next big shift. So people have digitized offline assets into online assets. And people have got an online access point through the mobile. So these two things have really accelerated adoption of gaming. Then I think obviously the ecosystem of the developing ecosystem, which is obviously, I think I will let Rohit talk more about that because he's deep end of that. But that is important. And fourth is obviously the investment ecosystem is also extremely important. So how does the money is flow? And currently, $1 billion gone into the sector over the last 6 years, and big part of it has gone largely into real money gaming. And that is because it was low hanging fruit, ready market. People adapted quickly onto smartphones. It is not that graphic intensive most of these sports as you would find console sports to be, and some of them are obviously now graduating to mobile as well. But I think it's investments. So investments have driven. You have seen what's happened in Dream 11, the kind of traction. So investment ecosystem extremely important. Gaming, because it takes time to get user traction, and for that you need investment. Therefore, investment is extremely crucial. And right now there is billions of dollars waiting to come in, provided the last point, which is more crucial, is the regulatory ecosystem. That is something which is a bit gray and fluid right now. And I was in an earlier webinar today, which we had some justices talk about it, and it is there is a lot of regulation there on various aspects, but there are certain aspects which are not there, and there are certain aspects which are arbitrary happening in the space. So that's extremely crucial to kind of smoothen out for the market to kind of get even better than what it is right now. I always say Turkey is a great example and country, much smaller than India, much bigger gaming apps, much bigger gaming monetization, and I think we have a lot to learn. But yeah, that's some of the ecosystem elements which in my view are I think quite important. Thanks.
Thanks, Pankaj, for very well summarizing that so shortly and sweetly. So picking up a couple of aspects from there, one of the aspects that you mentioned is monetization. So Rohit, if you can pick up on this, say Indian user is not known to be a big wallet share, whether it's a telco ARPU you look into it, or a what do you say, streaming media ARPU, anything on entertainment. When the spend is there, the wallet share is very low per user per se. So how does the industry cope up with it? What are the other kinds of monetization models that the industry is working upon to overcome this challenge?
Yeah, I think in India, one of the things that is working really well is ad monetization, right? In-app monetization is largely non-existent, and I think that comes down to more of a habit problem than anything else. Indians are not accustomed to paying for anything, right? We like to consume content, and when somebody charges for it, we like to go to some other place, or we always look for deals, and that's probably the way some of the players are trying to monetize in India. The Hotstar or Amazon, they started out with very low packs for Indian market, so basically to build the habit. So in India now, I think most of the monetization happens through ads, very early stages of in-app monetization coming through. And I think one of the games that showed that in-app monetization is possible at all in India in a non-casino, non-RMG kind of a space is PUBG, probably PUBG. I think they were able to monetize their content to some extent, and which I think which kind of shows the potential for the rest of us to figure out what does it take to get Indians to pay for the games. But right now, ads, ads.
Ads. So taking that ad subject slightly ahead, say I'm a very big fan of Pokemon Go as such. So looking at it, some thoughts I had is there are these gyms which are placed all over the geographic map per se, but there is this lot of virtual space which is there within the game, which is all not so very monetized in terms of can someone pay for becoming a Pokemon gym? Can someone pay for? There is a banner there on the real map part of the game. Can there be used for advertisement of a banner per se? So these are not really seen too much as such. So where are they in the overall ecosystem? Are you seeing them happening in the next few this thing, or is it far away?
Yeah, I think my personal opinion is far away, and I think a good part of it is experimental in nature, right? So I think with Pokemon, if you look at the way they designed that game, I think it was a standout hit, and they knew exactly what they were doing. And you have to get some kind of a history on the kind of game, the kind of company that built that title. So you were marrying two things. One is Google's knowledge of the entire stuff, right? The maps interface and all those kind of things. Okay, they had some form of access to that. And the second thing is the core IP of Pokemon itself. And so there is somebody kind of married that and put together this game. And in the industry, there have been very few successful successor to that genre of game. Okay, so for everybody else who don't have these two, the very strong IP and a very strong back end engine that powers it, it's going to be very difficult to come out with successors to a similar kind of game. And there will be experimentation. I think experimentation is going to happen, but can something huge come out of it? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, at the moment, you can't predict such things.
Got it. Got it. So if I compare gaming or a game release to a movie release, which we all are very used to understanding, movie success is measured by its box office collections. How much money does it make in the first week, second week as a release? There's a very clear set model of theatrical release this much, OTT release this much, music release I get this much. How do I get back my money, etc., etc. So is there a very clear KPI per se when it comes to revenue model or the metrics for measurement when it comes to games? Gaurav, if you can take this question for me.
I think, I'm more of an RMG guy. So I can tell you that from a real money gaming perspective, the entire matrix is very different. From day one, when we start, RMG, we start making money, which is very different from non-RMG. In non-RMG, like you said, it's like making a movie and you're talking about, giving various rights. Are you going advertising or are you going subscription? Or are you going to just, do a free app kind of thing or a freemium kind of thing? There's so many things which is going to be, happening. And for any game to be successful, I think the most important thing is the liquidity of people inside that. So you need to have sufficient number of people playing against each other, and then only you can talk about monetizations. And when you compare it to a movie again, and I'm taking the non-RMG part of it right now, then you will look at, what is the kind of subscription you're going to be able to sell it at, what are the kind of ads you'll be able to do or real estate you'll be able to utilize. And that's a very, very, very different way you'll be looking at from those KPIs and the cohorts and engagement and all of those things. When you look at RMG, on the other hand, like I said, you start making money from day one, right? And it is more about how do you engage with those guys again and again, get the users who are already there on your platform to come and play more. And you are also in the acquisition spree all the time because the market is so huge. So I hope I answered it, even though it's not a direct correlation. We don't have AAA games in India.
Right, right. So Rohit, maybe if you can take the same question from the other side of the gaming world, not non-RMG, how does this parameterization work?
Yeah, I think ultimately it is about something called as in gaming parlance LTV, long lifetime value, right? So it is always a CAC versus LTV kind of a calculation that happens in the gaming industry. So predominantly in mobile gaming, you have two very very popular forms of games right now. One is the hyper casual games. These are the games that they're innovative puzzle based games that come out, and they are very popular for the few weeks, and they within those few weeks they monetize, and people move on to another hyper casual games. And there's a huge kind of shift in gaming that's happening now because of a very very successful hyper casual gaming studios across the world. The second one is a more a long form entertainment games, like the whole Clash of Clans kind of games, that township kind of game, the gardenscape, these kind of games, the domination, the more long term engagement kind of games that are played not just for a month, but probably for a year or several years altogether. So everywhere it is about creating a game in the long term engagement games, and you acquire a customer. Probably a paying customer might cost you anywhere from $60 to $70, and you're figuring out how do you make more than that much money from that customer in the next 6 months. And that is where the whole equation comes down to. So it's either how much are you paying per user, either a paid or a free user, versus how much do you pay per a paying user. So if you're paying 60 to $70 for a paying user, you have to make more than that money over over the next 6 months for you to get that. So I think these are the core metrics, LTV by CAC. And then there are multiple things like average revenue per daily active user, average revenue from paying users. There's so many other smaller metrics, but at the end of it, it's ROI that these kind of companies look at.
Right. Right. So Pankaj, coming back to the thing on investments, see, as the sector is growing so much, there are 400 plus startups which are jumped into this. So eagerly, the investment community is also looking into this. What is the view from an investor's lens when it comes to gaming companies? What do you look for? Is it something which is unique? Is it something which is viral? What is it that brings in the money as we speak today?
So if you see the overall system, investors have been investing in the space over last 7-8 years. Now we have 2-3 categories. There are players of scale in RMG today, and they're companies with healthy unit economics, right from few hundred crores to 1,000 crores plus. That's the space that is the maturity of our gaming. So that is the space where you have profitable companies, right from 200 crores to 2,000 crores, or not so profitable but still of that scale. So that is one end of the spectrum. Then there is obviously other end of the spectrum, which is the whole startup ecosystem. And what are investors looking at? In the RMG space, investors are looking at confidence because the ticket sizes are going up. People are looking at confidence in the space in terms of regulatory environment. That's the single most question. And our interactions are with at least a dozen multi-billion dollar players and multi-billion dollar funds, and many more funds actually, almost 40 who are very keen to invest in the space. But I think we have had a lot of surprises in the last 6 months, which has kind of created a lot of nervousness for any fund manager to take a call. Having said that, big part of India, which is almost the size of United States, is actually free to play. There is not. I mean, people obviously say something has happened in one state. We've got 30 states in this country. There are 25 of them which are, or 20, slightly around that, is somewhere where it is, it's still pretty green in terms of the, playing ecosystem. But what if scenarios are not getting answered properly today? So I think that's important to address. And I think we'll address some of these things have, especially in RMG, have reached various high courts. Some of them have reached Supreme Court. So eventually the Supreme Courts are going to decide. That's what we gather. I think the regulators are somewhat happy to let it be status quo as long as it can. But I think it will eventually, the courts are going to decide. So I think that's one piece which really the investors are looking at. At the early stage, I think people are looking at that next viral idea, which is going to be the next viral high content idea, high technology idea, which basically has the potential to scale up. This is more, and the idea, and this is very similar to I was talking to about the Turkish market, of the ability to create high quality casual games is going to be where, if in RMG you're looking at, they're clearly established market leaders. It's about what quantum of funding you can raise to be really surviving and maximizing from the market. So it's like the second phase of e-commerce, which has happened, is happening in RMG now. But as far as the hyper casual, and that's where the biggest entrepreneurship is going to happen, because there you can see the combination of best creativity. We have seen players, we have seen assets there which has got world class traffic but don't have world class monetization. Monetization is abysmal. I mean, statistically, we have 15% of the global gaming traffic. We have 0.5% of monetization globally. So we have a long way to go. And the way that can happen is when our casual games also start humming. And I think so the quality of content and the ability of growth virality in that space is going to be driving investment, which means the kind of things Rohit was mentioning, which means you, at what CACs are you acquiring customers, what is the lifetime values, how is the alpha there, and that is going to drive basically investors confidence. The regulatory environment there is very positive, in the sense there is no regulatory hiccup in that space. It is about how quickly we penetrate the market. Remember, the other point is this space is highly competitive because you're competing with world players here. You're not only competing with Indian players. The whole world is there competing with you. Those assets are also available to Indian consumers. A PUBG is being played by Indian consumers as well. Or any other Candy Crush is being played by Indian consumers as well. So you have to compete and create world leading. So it'll take some time. But I think we have all the ingredients there. And those people and those sharpshooters who can create that mix of creativity and to create the right traction and virality, and it's not time bound, it could happen tomorrow, right? There are a lot of people thinking in those lines. So those are some of the thoughts I have on two sides of the thing, and there are some stuck in the middle where they can't grow because more funding is not coming because of the legal issues, and so they are in like status quo situation there right now. But those are the two clear categories are there. There is RMG, some who feel that a relatively safe domain has raised a lot of money. There are RMG players diversifying into casual to de-risk themselves. And that is the other space which is happening. So you de-risk yourself, you try and put all your technology prowess, you go cross-border. So the people who have abilities to go beyond India and de-risk themselves. So the RMG players, the big de-risk going on right now. So if you're looking at de-risking yourself, then investors might still buy in to say that, okay, if something happens in India and 10 states, I'm still safe because this guy will be operating in Nepal and Maldives and Malaysia and Thailand and various other countries or overseas. And you have seen some of the players who are doing it successfully have raised capital in the last 6 months on back of that. So that is my few things from the investor point. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Pankaj. So, Gaurav, sticking on the RMG space per se, looking at it, there are few categories in the RMG space. There are some which are like a card game, the game so-called game of skill, wherein there's a bit of game of skill, game of luck. There is a debate which keeps going on that side of it. The other part of it is kind of fantasy sports, whereas there's a sports happening and then you are choosing a team and kind of things which are happening here. So there are entrants who have made their foray into this field, who have made big raise capital, etc. So is that field taken in that scenario? Can smaller guys compete on that scale? Is it then about how well you market and advertise your product? Who do you have as your sponsor, or when do you sponsor? Who do you have as a brand ambassador? So those elements, vis-a-vis a game of poker kind of a thing, it's once it's developed, another guy can develop a similar thing. It's just a user interface. What are the elements you think can be a differentiator in a RMG game when it comes to hit or miss?
I think the most important thing, Prashanth, is intellectual property. So when you make something unique, then you have some defensibility. If you're going to be a Me Too product, then it's going to be a big. You're going to compete with the bigger guys with lots of money, and you're going to more likely fail than not because you're going to come with more money. And so when it comes to poker, when it comes to rummy, when it comes to fantasy, unless and until you have formats which are going to be distinguishing yourself with others and you can legally defend them, RMG will have a lot of, all of this legality attached to it, as Pankaj also said very rightly. The regulations are still evolving. Like in most cases, in any country, regulations come in after the industry comes into play. When they realize that there is a need to regulate, then the regulation comes. Currently, what is happening is India, all the states have to make their own laws about regulation because center cannot come into it. The center, as per the Constitution of India, cannot make regulation around gaming. All games of scale are allowed technically at the current moment, but each state will have the right to regulate whether they want to, do games of chance, they want to do games of skill, or they don't want any gaming at all, right? So if you have legal defensibility and you have intellectual property which is going to allow you to have entry barriers as compared to anybody else. Now you look at the legal, the leading players in fantasy, for example. They've made a particular format which is so-called legal, but there are other companies which are trying to do other permutations, combinations, and seeing whether that is going to be legal, that's going to be allowed or not. They're really pushing the boundaries towards sports betting, and you have to see whether that is going to be defensible. So again, you are going to be in RMG only when you can defend yourself legally. You believe that the policy which is going to come out is going to be in your favor. That's the only way to be able to do something about it.
Right. So taking it another example that Pankaj spoke earlier, he said Turkey showed to the world what can be done in terms of creation of games and export of games, etc. So Rohith, can you take up and maybe explain what does it take for India to become the next Turkey? What are the ingredients that's required to India to create the games for the world? India is already creating software for the world when it comes to anything else. A lot of the big software development companies have their back office in India for development. Why has it not happened for gaming, and what does it take to happen?
Yeah, I think gaming or the kind of gaming that Turkey became very successful at. We call them as long form entertainment games, right? The games that are played for several years. Okay, for that you need few very very core key ingredients. You need the programming talent, and you need the art talent, and then you need the whole design talent, right? Game design, and finally you need to marry it and tie it all with the strong economy design. Okay, so to build a great gaming studio, you need to have a team that that is a intersection of all these things, and that's when magic happens. And in a way, something like this happens when there are larger companies in the ecosystem, and a lot of people who leave those companies and start smaller companies after learning the know-hows from that. And I think that happened in Turkey because people who were working in larger game studios in Europe or in USA, they went back to Turkey, got together and started building these studios. Studios like Peak Games, Gram Games, many of them were bought by Zynga recently in the last 12 to 14 months for 200 million plus valuation. I think those are the ingredients that you really need to build studios of this kind. And I think there are some things that Indians are good at, and we are always been good at creating products for the world market, right? We have always been the back office of the world, building world class products. But gaming is slightly different because you have to marry economy design, you have to marry the whole the design, the game design as such, the whole the art style. So it is not just one or two things that you need to get right, but you need to get 4 or 5 things right. If you get 3 out of 4 right, you will not make it. If you get 4 out of 4 right, you will make it. So that's how crucial it is, because ultimately as a studio you are competing with the best companies in the world.
Do you see different challenges when it comes to making games for India, Rohit, whether it is language barrier or is it the content that has to be hyper localized. If you look at games which are being created, which are these kind of story kind of games, you look into it, there's always based on some kind of historic event, whether it's a war, whether it's a kind of historic event, a coup, etc. So here, when we come to India, there are a lot of history per se. So there's a lot of mythological history, there is other history, political history, etc. Do you see that as a challenge to the India market? How does it change when it sees the world versus the India market game development?
Yeah, I think, see, we have to be very optimistic of the gaming market, because you should look at it at the very early stages of gaming in India. Because see, right now, you have a huge market, bandwidth costs are negligible. Okay, everybody is getting familiar playing all these games. So, it's like the global gaming studios are kind of teaching Indians, okay, this is how the games are, to be designed, and they're setting certain, expectation in the mind of consumers. But as in any other content medium, content will move local. Okay, it happened to television studios back in 2000. It's happening now to OTTs. The content will move local. It happened to YouTube a few years ago. Initially, the content will all be global, but after some time, people want to consume local stuff, and that is where the opportunity for gaming studios in India that are building games with a very strong Indian theme in them will start making a big difference. So I think we are still in very early days, and I think the next 10 years are going to be great. I think as angel investors or people in this forum, they should bet on teams. Okay, uh, you shouldn't wait for people to show you how it's going to work. You have to bet on the team, and give them money, and make sure that they will then get it right. So if you think you're going to wait for somebody to figure it out, they wouldn't need your money after they figure it out.
I think with that interesting thought, Prashant, could we move towards concluding comments from the panel? I think we have.
Sure, sure. I want one very important point. I just wanted to ask Pankaj, and then
Absolutely.
we'll move to the
Absolutely.
other thing. So, Pankaj, one last thing that I wanted to ask before we move on to the concluding comments. What is the role of AI, ML, simulation, etc., in the world of gaming, and how do you see it shaping up?
So we have seen some assets. It is great to see, but we haven't seen great monetization on it yet. So I think it is early days and it's got good potential. Simulation in particular, we have seen some assets, very interesting assets, world leading traffic, but not showing enough monetization. And that will improve. The ecosystem of talent is also changing. So some of these things will happen. Strategic guys will enter. Big boys are there now in gaming, the Paytms, Geos, all of them are there right now. So they are all looking at this. And I think the other part is going to be, I think there is going to be a lot of AI around your mobile phone. So I think some of that is going to go into gaming as well, in terms of mining stuff and then creating customized gaming, quizzing, all of that kind of stuff. So, but that is, it is good. It is good to have. Some of the bigger guys may adopt it quicker, and the smaller guys could create differentiation. So but yeah, I mean, it's got good potential. I see that happening in a few years, not immediately, but yeah, it's got potential.
Thank you, thank you. So as we hear all of this, the multiple questions that were there in the minds of listeners on this side, whether it's web app versus mobile app, seasonal games, evergreen games, console or mobile, subscription, advertisement, what is it, action games, puzzle games, online, offline, various things that were there. Hopefully, in the discussion, we were able to address some of the points in this scenario. What I would request the panelists here is to make a conclusion remark on their side as to what does it take from here to the next step. How do they see it coming? You want to go, Gaurav, first?
I think, Prashant, it's a very, very exciting time for gaming, both for RMG and non-RMG. I think Rohit very rightly said that, there's a lot of investment which has to go in, both of time as well as perseverance, as well as resources to make games which are non-RMG, because the monetization takes time to come. The product market fit is extremely important. So investors have to come in with the thought process. They have to back teams who have proven themselves in the past. They can get to product market fit sooner than later, and they have to back them to that. If you see, globally, nationally also, games are not made overnight. Blockbuster movies, blockbuster games take time. They mature over time. And that's what is needed. That incubation is needed in India very severely. And the returns which follow thereafter will be humongous if we do it right. In the RMG part of it also, you have to be very careful that you don't want to, replicate what others have done and believe that it is legally tenable. You have to be very, very careful that you don't go about, creating games of chance or anything, because that, gets bad name to the industry also, and you will cause a lot of problem to the entire community and the stakeholders themselves. So my, closing remarks would be very exciting times. Choose your games very carefully, be passionate, you have to give in a lot, and then you can expect a lot much later.
Thank you. Rohit, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think very exciting times. I think it's a great time for really young startups. Two to five people teams with different kind of skill sets to come together and start building games for the Indian market, right? So you should not take a lot of investment at the beginning. Take smaller investment. Keep experimenting. Keep building stuff, building your tool chain along the way, and I think success will follow. So I think, and as a country, we are probably where the Western market was in the year 2011, 2012, when the mobile gaming was just, showing up, and probably, where China was, 2016, 17, when, it was showing the early signs of it. And I think, yeah, we are in for very exciting times.
Thanks. Pankaj?
My two bits, I think in my belief is we are at an inflection point, and I think gaming will surprise people in the next 5 years, like not many other six sectors can. One, two, for the startups, my two bits are, I think the more you focus on IPR, uniqueness, competence on the tech side, and uh, you know uh, for want of cash you might still find a strategic solution. So it's worth going in that direction, because there are big strategic players there today who want more and more IPR and IP to build onto their platform, the platformation strategy. So you will get a solution as long as you're very solid in what you're trying to do. So even from this is an angel network. So anyone looking at this space would want to look at something which has got legs and defensible legs in terms of the kind of technology they're using or the kind of IPR they have in terms of the creativity, or it'll certainly find a solution, and there'll certainly be and what I totally agree with Gaurav is that if you do a Me Too product, then there is no hope in hell. So that is the uniqueness what you do in this space, and there is the world is the opportunity here. It would be unique to India, it could be unique internationally, and there are a lot of people looking to add on, and there's a lot of capital there to add on. So it's a very promising sector, not easy to take calls, but as long as you see uniqueness in a space, and yes, some unit economics as well, then there is a hope, I think. Thank you.
Thanks all for this exciting session. I would like to end by saying the gamer in me is as excited as the consultant in me. And with the holiday season coming up, I have lined up my titles as what I need to run through in the holidays as such, with nowhere to go in the holidays. I'm sure I'm going to spend some binge nights playing through my games. Thank you, everyone, and back to you, Shivangi.
Prashant, I
Thank
think that
you.
sounds like an
Thank you.
exciting holiday plan. Thank you, Pankaj, Gaurav, and Rohit also for taking time out. With this, we conclude the second panel for today.